thank you for coming, first of all, and tuning in. Me and my partner feel this is a really important issue to talk about. We see it day in and day out, and year over year with guys who come in and train with us, and then they get great results. And then they feel like, okay, I did what I have to do. Now let me go play baseball. And we're here to tell you that it really doesn't, it doesn't end there. And we're going to tell you why, and we're going to give you some examples. So without further ado, why in-season training? So spending 4 to 6 months in the off season to increase your body weight, your mobility, your strength, and your power is a big investment, both from a time standpoint and financially. And anyone who trains with us, either remotely or in-house, knows that A, it is a time-consuming chore, and it is also something that, you know, it can get pricey. So you owe it to yourself to continue with an effective in-season baseball program. You do not want to let all that work that you did trail off and when the season starts. And trust me, once you start playing baseball, it will trail off. Okay, we've seen this movie over and over again, and I've always found that our best performers that we train excel late in the season when it really matters. So in season is basically the time when scouts are coming, colleges are recruiting, and an athlete needs to perform at his best throughout the entire season, not just at the beginning. So playing baseball makes you better at the technical side. You'll be great at playing baseball, but it does not help you get stronger, and it does not allow you to continue to be more explosive and powerful. And these things will transfer in to losses in speed, losses in change of direction, losses in velo, much of what we're going to talk about today. So we all know that school happens, exams happen, you're training, you have travel teams, they want you to train with them, games, practices, tournaments, the schedule, 2-3 games on the weekend. But it's also important to understand that once these things are all draining your power, and once your power begins to decline, compensations begin to take place. This compromises your performance overall. So this is a great graph that I saw from Mike Reinhold one time, and he called it managing a controlled fall. And that is exactly what we're doing in season. We work so hard to get these guys strong. And then once they start playing, playing the game of baseball does not make, or playing soccer or playing any sport, does not make you stronger. It actually makes you weaker. Okay, you are expending a lot of energy. You're putting your body in a lot of positions. You may not be getting the best of sleep. You may be not getting the best hydration. Whatever it is not making you stronger. You definitely need to re-up in the weight room. So this graph shows this 100%. This is where a lot of our guys start at in the beginning of the season. They train with us all off season. Their velo's up. Their body looks better. Their lean body mass is great. So right now, we're on top of the world, right? We're looking at it and we're like, this is phenomenal. We start to play baseball, and a lot of guys who do not continue to at least put into 2 to 3 days a week that it takes, it's not a 5-day process, but the 2 to 3 days it takes to actually re-up the body with the things that playing baseball does not give you, which we'll talk in a little bit. This controlled fall starts to happen, okay? And once we fall below 80% of our strength and our power, we start to see compensations in performance. Some guys will hit this really quickly. Some guys will take longer to hit this. But the one thing we can show you is that what we see year over year and we can call this throwing velocity. We can call this exit velo for hitters. We could call this change of direction. But right here for throwing velocity, if you look at November, this is basically after fall ball. okay? And we're looking at guys that have been pitching probably spring, summer, and fall. And you can see that they're pretty much starting their offseason down at around this is just an example, 79 miles an hour. The deload alone and the ramp up will increase their velocity just solely by not expending, and strength training and getting more mobile will help them. As we get into December, when we start to throw, when we personally start to throw, we will start to see that we're working at a velo, and by the time we start to ramp up in January, we'll start to see slow gains tick up through February, through March, okay? And around the middle of March, this is when playing starts. So guys walk in with their arm hanging in November from, 7 months of in-season, summer, fall ball, and we slowly bring them up into March. And quite honestly, all the work that we do in the off season, we really don't even see spikes in the increase in velo until April. When the weather gets warm, they're throwing to live batters. The warm weather is a big thing. We start to see in April and May that guys that maybe we see a lot of kids a lot of times in March are like, wow, my velo's up 2 or 3 miles an hour. I wish it was up a little more. We're like, you know what? You got to give it a little bit of time. You got to start throwing. You got to start playing ball. You got to start competing. You got to take the warm weather into consideration. And all of a sudden, we're always getting all these Instagram posts and all these Twitter posts from these kids that are thrilled that in, April 25th, their velo is PR. So this is where we start to see guys peaking, okay? If they do not continue to strength train, if this is a guy who has not continued to strength train, this is around the time, the end of April, where all the training he's done will start to wear off and cannot compete with the amount of stress that he's putting on his body from playing the sport. And we will see large drops in velo from the end of April into June. This is where guys are panicking, okay? This is also when people are really coming out to see guys play. This is when your team is going deep into the playoffs. This is a big time where you do not need to see this drop in a velo, because this drop in velo is going to be easier to hit to a hitter who has been training in season and is keeping his bat speed up, okay? So this is a really crucial time, and what happens is guys start to try, they get frustrated, they're thinking that something's going wrong, and they're starting to try to grab this velo with their arm. They start to overuse the arm, they start to really throw, and they start to get sore, and all of a sudden, their arm's barking in June when it's time to start summer ball. If this isn't bad enough, they're going to actually think now that because their velo's down, they're going to have to play some more baseball to get their velo up, right? So now we're going to join a summer league and we're going to continue to play baseball. Now we're adding in really hot weather, dehydration, multiple games on the weekends, not getting enough sleep, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to compound that. And now we're watching, this is this controlled fall that we're seeing, okay? And then all of a sudden, it's August, everyone takes a break, and then they come back in September, and their arms hanging. And for the guys who come in September, and their arms hanging, they have a little bit of help by not playing fall ball and actually training, but the guys who continue to play fall ball, this actually continues to drop even more. And that's where we end up in November, with a guy whose arm is hanging. So this is a really, really great and important slide to understand about what we see a lot year over year with guys once they leave our facility and do not train in season. Questions? Topics to consider. Pitchers generally lose. So why does this happen? Pitchers generally lose approximately 10 degrees of IR after each outing, up to 10 degrees of IR after each outing, due mostly in part to tightness in the posterior cuff from trying to decelerate that arm. Every time you throw a baseball, you are basically throwing your arm and pulling it out of the socket, and the cuff grabs on, and the posterior cuff grabs, and day after day and throw after throw, this posterior cuff gets cranky and we lose the ability to internally rotate. Okay. Ultimately, this presents itself as shoulder or elbow pain in pitchers from trying to make that velo up, like I said before, with their arm, as well as oblique strains in position players from overswinging. So everything I'm saying with pitchers, you can correlates to throwing as well. I mean, it's hitting as well. This will compound as the season goes on. It's not going to get better by playing the game. A lot of people just simply think that keep continuing to play baseball. If I've got a problem with my velo, I need to keep throwing. I need to get, it's my mechanics. It's my mechanics. It most likely is your body. Okay. I can just tell you that it's most likely your body. Bottom line is throwing a baseball helps increase your arm speed and your endurance, but those gains will not be maintained unless you're maintaining your strength as well. Position players, topics to consider: losses in strength and power. For pitchers, it's velo. For batters, it's losses in bat speed. It's losses in running speed. It can make an 85-mile-an-hour pitch, like I said before, feel like 88 to 90. Okay, losses in running speed. Simply continuing to do sprint work at practice and games. Speed work is great if you're actually able to start and stop rapidly and change direction. And that is a strength issue, okay? That is something that all the work in the world, ladder drills will make you good at ladder drills. Cone drills will make you good at cone drills. But unless you can stop and change direction really quickly as an infielder, you will not be able to make that play. And that really, really has a lot to do with maintaining your strength. And that's where we get to losses in change of direction speed. We need strength to be able to decelerate and change that direction. This holds true for infielders having to stop on a dime in order to change direction, and arm health as well. It is not only pitchers who have to worry about their arm health. As we all know, shortstops, third baseman, second baseman, they have to make quick plays. They have to get the ball and they have to get it to first. It's not as extreme as pitchers, but these losses in strength and mobility compromise throwing velocity for infielders and outfielders as well. So we're going to talk about training residuals. Training residuals are the things that go away as you start playing the game. So how long does it really take before your performance begins to degrade once training stops? The table on this next page shows the training residual time frame of specific adaptations. So I want to take away aerobic strength and endurance, because aerobic strength and endurance is something that does not even really come into play with baseball players. They do not do anything long enough to work on their aerobic endurance. They need to work on their anaerobic endurance and their power. So we're going to focus on these bottom four: max strength, power, power endurance, and speed. And according to research, this is a very famous table made by Vladimir Issarin. And this tells you on the right-hand side how long it takes before these residuals go away. Now, maximal strength, you can see you could go up to about 3 weeks without training max strength, and you're going to be okay before that starts to decline, maybe even 4 weeks, okay? But power output, you got about 2.5 weeks, okay? So we start baseball in the middle of March. Power is already starting to decline around the second week of April, okay? Power endurance. So power is your ability to be really explosive. And power endurance is your ability to be really explosive over and over again. So the average time between pitches can be anywhere between 30 to 40 seconds. We need to be able to create and recover our power within that 30 to 40 seconds over and over again over the course of an inning, okay? That does not, by playing baseball and throwing hard every 40 seconds, that is not building up your power endurance. You need strength to build up that power endurance. And I think a lot of people think, well, whatever I need to do, I just need to keep doing that. That's partially true. from the technical side, but from a strength side, there is no way that an athlete is going to be able to maintain his velocity every 30 to 40 seconds throughout the course of an entire game if he does not maintain his strength. Okay, and what you're going to start to see is he drops in velo. You're going to start to see throwers throwing high in arm side. They're letting go of the ball earlier because they physically can't hold on to it with their core. And this could be during the course of a game. This could be over the course of a week. This could be over the course of a few weeks. But whatever it is, we are managing that controlled fall. It is not going to get better by simply throwing. In-season training, max strength, power, and power endurance, like I said, do not get trained in the sport of baseball, okay? Throwing over and over again, it requires power endurance. It does not train power endurance. There's a big difference between what you want to get out of training and actually training for that adaptation. Okay, so if you want to increase your power endurance and you want to increase your ability to throw over and over again and maintain your velocity, you do not get that by throwing over and over again. That's the end result. Strength training makes you able to do that, as well as maintaining your maximum acceleration, maintaining your bat speed, maintaining your exit velo, maintaining your ability to change direction really quickly. So as a result, we need to train these things weekly in the weight room. Whereas speed is usually addressed in practice. They're doing sprints. They're doing 5-10-5 shuttles. We're doing sprint work. We don't really need to train speed because hopefully you're getting that with your coach. To create a successful in-season program, the first step is to understand that in a nutshell, what I'm basically saying is the attributes that playing the game helps develop are different from what the athlete needs to be able to consistently perform them at a high level, which I just said about power endurance. What you need happens in your training. It doesn't happen in actually playing the sport. Questions? Great. Different traits dominate different sports, and in the game of baseball, these are the big players. Things that get lost are mobility, core strength, max strength, power, and power endurance. None of these are trained while you play the sport of baseball. Let's take them one at a time. Mobility. Athletes don't just get hurt in season because they lose strength. They also generally get hurt because they lose mobility. We were talking about internal and external, tight external rotators, sacrifice internal rotation. What happens is the arm slams shut. We start to get posterior elbow pain. We start to get pain in the supraspinatus and the cuff. We start to get medial elbow pain. We even start to get lower back pain. The amount of sitting and standing during games can be a real factor for losses in mobility, especially in the Northeast, where we spend a month sitting on the bench, waiting for the weather to get better. A lot of games get canceled. There's tryouts, there's practices, and kids are sitting in kyphotic positions on the bench. What we know about throwing a baseball is that if mobility is impaired, velocity and control will be compromised as well. So this can present itself anywhere on the body, but the big players for baseball are the hips, the T-spine, and shoulder mobility and stability. The T-spine. In a rotational sport, maintaining T-spine mobility is king. If you do not have good T-spine mobility, you will not be able to actually get good scap load. You will also not be able to finish. If you can't adequately rotate, the arm slams shut early, and this is where we start to get shoulder pain and posterior elbow pain. Glenohumeral mobility and stability. This is the mobility of the arm in the socket on the rotator cuff and the actual stability that allows the cuff to hold that ball and socket in congruency in place through the course of a season. Okay? Hips. The hips get a bit gritty from sprinting as well as posting up. Every time a pitcher posts up, he slams into internal rotation on his front leg. Slamming into internal rotation, not going back and working on that mobility, not strengthening that front leg can seriously compromise the athlete's ability to continue to internally rotate. Once he stops internally rotating, he'll end early. Once again, the arm either slams shut, or once IR is compromised, the body tells the arm, we don't have this anymore. And they let go. And that's why you see once we get late in the season, pitchers start throwing high and arm side because they're finishing early because the hip is just losing its mobility. So some of these, we just wanted to show you a couple exercises as a result of what we do with our guys in season. Here is something where we're going to keep working on that internal rotation of the front hip. And at the same time, we're going to work on the strength of that posterior cuff. This is a bowler squat with a reverse throw. If there's anything that I can say that in-season training is really good for, it is to make sure that the athletes, if I'm talking to athletes or if I'm talking to parents, that your kids are in a place where they're making sure that they're doing this 2 to 3 times a week. Because if they're not, you can say, oh, they're going to do that at the field. They're not going to do that at the field. Core. Not to beat a dead horse, but everyone talks about the importance of a strong core, and for good reason. The core has a positive impact on breathing, on endurance. Once we learn how to breathe correctly, and we can breathe, we don't breathe in our chest anymore. We don't tighten up the neck muscles. We don't cause this, and it makes it hard to get overhead. It also helps to transfer force from the lower body to the upper body. This oblique sling in your core, once you land, the force that's transferred from your hip comes up through the sling and into the upper body. It reduces the risk of such overuse injuries in season as low back pain and even shoulder problems. I can't tell you how many guys come in May or June and they tell me, wow, my velo's down and my back is killing me. I remember when I was younger, there weren't a lot of 16 and 17-year-old kids complaining about lower back pain. And the problem was, the reason for that, I believe, is that kids were playing more different sports. They were climbing trees. They were riding bikes. They were doing things that promote global movement in the body. Okay, we're now in an era where kids are sitting in kyphotic positions on their phones all day. And what happens is we're not creating really good movers anymore. And that is one more reason that we need to train in season to make sure that we're hitting that a couple times a week. Dynamic cable lifts. Here's a great exercise that helps transfer force from the back leg. If this was a right-handed pitcher, from the back leg up through the hip, through the core, and into the arm. This is an example of something that will train, that will absolutely degrade as we go through the season. Strength and power training. More is not always better. Balancing the volume of your strength and mobility training with practices and games is crucial. Rarely will the strength portion of an in-season strength training program last more than 30 to 40 minutes. People have to understand that we do understand there's a lot going on in the spring with baseball players, practices, bullpens, games, and you cannot expect all that volume on the body. We can't have them come in and do their normal 75-minute off-season strength training. We realize that all we're really trying to do, we're trying to feed those 3 parameters, right? Those 3 variables, strength, power, and power endurance. So we really hit these 3 things in an in-season workout. And it's really important to make sure you're going to a place that realizes that they are training these 3 things. If you're just training max strength while you're fixing that part of the problem, you're actually you're not teaching them and helping them to apply it faster. Okay. Usually our workouts are 10 to 14 sets worth of work. Add an upfront warm up and you're talking about 50 minutes total. Guys get out of here sometimes in 45, 50 minutes. And power is taking the max strength and getting fast with it. So we're going to take 2 days to 3 days a week, and we're going to take that max strength, that power, and then we're going to do some conditioning to make sure that they can repeat that power endurance, whether it's pitching, whether it's hitting, whether it's running or fielding, over and over again. And we're going to condense that into 2 to 3 40-minute workouts. Here's another example, a hip bridge. The reason I want to show you a hip bridge is because when guys are throwing in season, we want to work the glutes. We want to work the back, the posterior chain. We want to work on it getting as strong as possible, but we don't want to put heavy weight in their hands, okay? They're throwing a baseball, they're swinging a bat, and the last thing they need to be doing is doing deadlifts. Off season and summer is the time for that. It is not that time in season. And then long distance running. A lot of people say, well, our coach does do a lot of conditioning. He makes them run a mile. He makes them run 2 miles. This is a pet peeve of mine. I just want to tell you that long distance running is the gift of slowness. I got that statement from Mike Boyle, great strength and conditioning coach, really a pioneer in the game, in the field. By using repetitive motion like jogging for an extended period of time, you will lose mobility in your hips. You do not reach full hip flexion or extension when you jog. You kind of keep your legs in a position where they do not only hike up, they do not kick back into a running. So you're not training sprint work and you're not training flexion or squatting, okay, or athletic positions. As we all know, human beings get good at what they practice. Baseball players should sprint instead of run poles. Instead of running a mile in 8 minutes, I would rather see guys do 5, 10, 5 shuttles with a 1 minute break in between, okay? They're still going to run for 8 minutes. The workout's going to be 8 minutes, but they're going to actually train the energy system that baseball players use. Running, for me, we stay far from it. Here's a quick story on what not to do. Last winter, one of our uncommitted pitchers, a lefty, ended the offseason in March and never returned until August. And I can say that this is not one of our uncommitted pitchers. This is many guys that we've seen over the years. At the time of his departure, he was throwing 84, and he was in a good place to get some looks, you know? So upon returning in August, he came in, his arm was hanging, he was down to 78 to 80 miles per hour, and he's still looking for that commitment. Because by the time guys got to see him in the summer or the end of the in-season, his velo should have been around 84, 85, but he was down. He was down, it looks here like 5, 6 miles an hour, okay? We assessed him when he came back in. His weight was down 12 pounds. And that is not uncommon with dehydration. Kids don't eat as well in the summertime, multiple games, and not strength training. He had a 30% loss in shoulder IR, which is very common, and a 20% loss in T-spine mobility. So I can't tell you how many times we've seen this, but this is not something that I would look at, and I would say this is a recipe for somebody who got better over time. This does not happen, and I will tell you, almost ever to the guys who train in season with us. I can only tell you guys this. You have to experience it for yourself. I've seen a couple names on here of people that I know for fact now their kids train in season because they have experienced this themselves. And closing remarks, maintaining, or even some guys increase their velo in season is paramount to combating overuse and dropping velos and overusing that arm and maybe getting hurt. In season doesn't need to occupy 4 to 5 days a week. It's not the all-encompassing thing that people make it out to be. And quite honestly, if you guys are dealing with teenage boys right now, I will tell you as a man that this will carry over to work ethic, whether they end up playing baseball or not. Okay. And what you do want is someone who gets the fact that, you know what, training is year round. Okay. So a good training program in season can get the job done in 2. If you want to maintain, you can get it done in 2 sessions a week. You're talking about investing maybe 90 to 2 hours a week in your son's baseball season, helping him get looks, helping him keep his velo, and really dealing with a happier kid at home. Because we all know that when that velo drops, or they're not hitting and they're in a slump, they're coming home. That does not make for a great day. Okay. If you want to continue to be your best in July and August, in-season training is one of the best ways to ensure that. So I really want to open it up to any questions that anyone has. So